Welcome, welcome, welcome back to the Beyonding podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Myra Capri. I am joined here with my amazing co-host, Kailei Carr. And we have a special guest today, and I am so excited. I cannot hide my excitement about this special guest who is joining us and who, y'all, I'm just saying, you need to be prepared to learn a lot, to shift your mindset, and to just be blown away with just such wisdom, spiritual wisdom, just wisdom. I will read a little bit of her bio because I think it was so well written. And then we're going to jump into a conversation with Dr. CarolLaine Garcia. So imagine a leadership philosophy that blends ancestral wisdom with the drive for modern liberation. This is the core of Queen Mindset Leadership Coaching, pioneered by Dr. CarolLaine, a first generation Dominican-American who transformed her consulting career and life tragedies into a force for positive and systemic change. Dr. Garcia isn't just a thinker, she's a guide. She empowers mesures of color and allies to rediscover their most liberated selves. Leading with authenticity and confidence, her approach integrates holistic wisdom with intuitive reflection, fostering audacious leadership for a more equitable world. That's powerful in itself. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. CarolLaine.
Thank you, Myra. Thank you, Kailei. I'm so excited to be here and how our conversation will flow today.
I am too. And so we're going to just jump right in. Your bio mentioned this idea or title, Queen Mindset Leadership.
Yes.
And I'm curious, what is that? How did it come about? Tell us a little bit about this powerful term.
Yeah. There's so many tributaries of rivers of my life that came together for that. Although I have a doctorate and I achieved it when I was 25, I felt like that was the top of my achievement. And I didn't really feel like I had really direction about how to do something greater with this. And because the things that I was seeing my colleagues accomplishing with their doctorates in terms of publishing and applied research and moving up the corporate ladder, none of that seems like a good time to me. And there's always kind of this sense of like my inner child has always been very vocal within me, even as I've tried to like disparage her and been like, I don't like this. And me as an adult is like, well, we got to work to like do this stuff. And inner child is like, no, I do not enjoy this. And so there's always this sense of dissatisfaction throughout my 10-year corporate career, although incredibly prestigious. And I had so much exposure to over 45 Fortune 500 companies. Like, what other immigrant gets an opportunity to be in the CEO, C-suite spaces of so many powerful organizations in the world, as usually either the only woman, the only Latina, the only woman of color, the only Ph.D., the only something. And where it came to a head for me was in 2021, I had a series of many awakenings. And one of them was a mental awakening. So I think that there's levels of awakening. And so this one, I'm just talking about mindset one. I was reading a gang of books. I was interviewing at a bunch of places because I was like, well, maybe it's time for a different job. That year, I ended up interviewing at 64 times, 24 organizations, final round 7 times, no job offers. And these were positions that I was literally handed. Like people were like, this is CarolLaine, and circumvented a lot of the formal, applying to the black hole process and still like getting no's, or found someone that had just slightly more experience than me. And so I was reading all of these books, and there was one conversation that I had with somebody who recommended the Mindset book by Carol Dweck. I have a doctorate. I studied growth mindset when I was, in my doctorate program. So I'm like, I had a positive bias of myself. I'm like, yeah, I have a growth mindset. And what I realized was that actually I didn't. I had a growth mindset when it came to certain topics within my field, not all of them, and fixed mindset when it came to artistry and creativity. I thought there were some people that were creative, some people that are artists, some people that can be polymaths and Renaissance people, but not me. I am just a person with this specific degree in this specific field. I don't like it, but this is all I can be for the rest of my life. And
Wow.
something about that just like really didn't resonate with me. And so as I was reading all of these books about spirituality and quantum physics and astrophysics and human civilization and trauma and psychology, there's like all of this plethora of interdisciplinary topics that I was exploring. It completely exploded my perspective of what mindset was beyond just growth and abundance and the ones that we typically hear about in corporate settings. And so the last layer to it, that I'm sure we'll delve into, but I just wanted to kind of set the stage and the scene for like how this came about, is at the same time that I was processing all this stuff, I ended up having then a feminine awakening, where I had decided that same year that I had read all those books that I was not going to have kids, and I had made the permanent decision through surgery. And when I woke up from my surgery, I woke up and I was like, now the rest of my life starts because I actually get to do what I want to. I don't know what that is, but now I get to figure it out. And so when I took motherhood out of the picture, and then when I took motherhood out of the picture, I was like, well, why would I get married? Why do people get married? And then I was like, actually, the values of marriage don't actually align with what I desire as a way of building romance. So let me take that off the table too. And then I took away the two major roles that women are given to feel valuable in our society. And so as I took
Wife and mother, right?
right.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a caregiver. My mother is healthy, thankfully. So I'm like, so then what is my value and worth to society? And I was having a really difficult time finding that. And so where it came to was I started studying the feminine, not as necessarily the woman, but feminine energy, yin energy. I started reading books about resting, about meditation, about grounding, about creativity, about just not productivity based stuff. And I started to realize that I was inherently worthy from the moment that I took my first breath. And so when I started to try to put all of that together, I was like, well, if I really led my life as if I felt like I was on purpose, exactly designed to be a child-free, marriage-free unicorn of a woman, how would I have to lead my life to believe that? And it was queen leadership mindset, because it was only a mindset. So queen leadership mindset was born. And then as I started kind of talking more about it, and this is where I'll wrap it up, eventually it transformed into a leadership paradigm. And there's been lots of people triggered by it, which I really enjoy witnessing, but it's basically a reclamation of self. And part of it is a reclamation of feminine energy that all humans need, regardless of identities. And it is like a composition of, if you believed that you were inherently a sacred being and you were endowed with the same infinite creativity that created the cosmos and everything that is on this planet and beyond, then what kind of worlds would you create if you felt empowered to create the worlds that you wanted to?
I feel like we need a pause to take that in.
Can you, yes, that question, it's so dense and powerful. What world would you create if you knew that you were a creator, you were created in the master creator's image? And I'm paraphrasing because you worded it so well. And I heard so much in that, and we could go deep, my goodness. But I am latching on to this idea of like liberation. You talked about decolonizing, you talked about separating from these, I guess, society given roles and titles. You talked about your clarity too at what I would consider such a young and tender age of, this is what's true to me, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, and I'm very clear about it, to the point of, I am going to make this permanent for me. You talk in your bio about this modern view of liberation and how you lead in your coaching others to liberation. First of all, what is liberation to you, and how does this queen mindset leadership really lead others to liberation, which it sounds like you are experiencing?
Yeah. So My definition of liberation didn't even come from activism. It came from Buddhism. When I was in college, I finished my bachelor's in 3 years. I graduated from high school at 17. I finished my bachelor's at 20. Like, my goal in life was to be the first to do whatever it was. It didn't matter if I enjoyed it. It was just like first to do whatever. And then I entered the corporate world and I started meeting people that were younger than me and more like higher up. And I was like, damn, like I should have gotten this PhD because like they're younger than me and have achieved this level that corporate America actually values. And so when I was in my my very first class in college, first generation everything, I was also taking like a how to adjust a college course because I didn't know what to do with all this freedom. Like, I had been under my mom's bosom for all of my life. And now I had to learn how to do my hair and feed myself and buy groceries and do laundry. And like all of that was incredibly overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
And so I'd taken an astronomy class and it completely blew up my worldview because I grew up Catholic. And so in my mind, the world was a few thousand years old. And, you know, God created everything. And like, here I am learning about billions of years of existence and time. And I'm like, this math is not like, it is not correlating.
Mm.
And so that class kicked me off into a philosophy search. I technically almost minored in philosophy. I just didn't officially pursue it. I just was, you know, taking a bunch of philosophy classes. And Buddhism was the first class that made sense to me because it didn't have a God as part of its teaching. It was all about self-liberation and releasing yourself from suffering and learning how to raise your consciousness and become enlightened. And, you know, as the first generation, everything, all of these words were like scary and exciting to me at the same time because I'm like, ooh, I want to be free on this earth, you know? And so that was the roots of what liberation started off being for me. But then as I started to embed myself in the corporate space, and one of the positives of not having been promoted as much as my ego wanted to be is I got to study people being leaders instead of like having to be forced into being a leader of something that I didn't want to do.
Mm.
And so as I was studying, worked with so many different brilliant types of people of all creeds and backgrounds and industries and colors and genders and all so much variety of humans, because as you may imagine, first working for 2 top tier consulting firms, but then also serving dozens of corporate clients, you just get to see a lot of people. You just get to witness a lot of people at work. That's literally what I was trained to do. And so as I started to study people at work and really like embed how people felt about themselves and life, and started to coach and see how completely unbalanced people are because they have not been taught how to be leaders of their life. They have only been taught how to be leaders of their work.
Yes.
So then outside of work, it's freaking chaos. Like, the friendships are not in alignment. The transparency in relationships are not there. The family is all over the place. The health is crap. You don't rest. You have no hobbies. Like, it's like a child was given a big person job, but wasn't told like how to continue to live their lives, you know? And that's why people are in balance because they don't know like how to even make new friends or like how to go to a thing by themselves and like be with the discomfort of being alone. Like, we don't know how to do that. Not we, they don't know how to do that, right? And so liberation then became a thing of like, okay, I've immersed myself in the systems. I have so many intersecting marginalized identities, but the one identity that rises above all of them is I have a doctorate. And through the doctorate, I can rise above my identities. And it's not that knowing the system makes it so that I deny that the system exists, but I just know that the system doesn't get to decide how I see myself. You can be racist towards me without me thinking that I'm less than. You can be sexist towards me without thinking that I'm less than. I'm just looking at your program and I'm like, oh, we haven't worked through that yet. But I can see it from a lens of compassion that you haven't unlearned that versus internalizing and saying something's wrong with me as I used to. And so liberation to me is like, I feel like a lot of times, especially in this era that we're in, we spend so much time complaining about what is and so little time imagining what could be.
Wow.
And liberation to me is like, instead of looking at the prison and complaining about the systems in the prison, maybe I'm going to go frolic into this field and build something different.
I love that. I love that. The imagination and just the invitation to see more than what is or what's in front of you. And then not letting the systems of society define you and who you are. So good. Kylie, it looked like you were
Good.
gonna.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, as I hear you talking about you taking agency over your life
Mhm,
and making conscious choices
mhm,
of who you're going to be and how you're going to operate and how you are going to explore what's possible. I've also heard you we heard you say that you have really had a voracious appetite of really learning
mhm.
these, philosophical, psychological, metaphysical things. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, when did that start for you? So
Mm.
were you a child who consumed a lot and was very curious, like, who is Caroline as a little girl? How
Ooh,
is she?
oh my
Mm,
gosh, she's unique. She's always been unique. So I have a very unique origin story in that my parents getting together it's like statistically speaking just like was not is not common. My mother was 30 and she had already been married, which in Dominican Republic at that era of her life is like, the scarlet letter to be a divorced woman, and she already had a kid. My father was 26 years older than her, was already an established doctor, already had about a dozen kids. Unbeknownst to my mom, he lied when they first met and told her that he only had 5 or 6 kids. So he scammed her. And just like a very unlikely love story. And my father didn't want any more kids because he had so many. My half siblings are like 30 to 35 years older than me. And
Wow.
so my mom had my brother with her ex-husband, always wanted to have a daughter. And on the way to me, first, like when they were married for a few years, they were decided to start trying. And then she ended up having 2 miscarriages before I was able to be kept. And so in between the miscarriages, she had to go undergo treatment in order to like stabilize her body or heal her body or whatever. And it was from the first pregnancy to when I was actually born, it was 4 years. Excuse me. So I was now like an awaited for child. Like I was so celebrated when I was born because my mom really wanted a daughter. And here I was, like the princess of the family and an unlikely daughter of my father after having lived almost the entirety of his life. He ended up living another 19 years after that. And so when I was born, so fun fact, I don't know the time that I was born. It will always be a mystery because my mother, she died during childbirth and then was revived.
Wow.
So I was born in a portal of literal life and death. And so for me, death was always just like a little, like not
Mm.
even a blackout curtain. It was just like one of those little like see-through curtains that you're like, oh, I see you right there. And so I grew up living, but knowing that death was like present. And as a child, I was very curious. I was very well spoken. Like my mom's like, you never babbles. Like when you spoke clearly. And my first language is Spanish. And I would correct people on their Spanish, which I do that in English still. Try not to, because apparently it annoys people. But, I'm like, that's not, how that goes together. Um, and so a lot of my trauma covered my inner child. And that's really where the excavation. I feel like whenever you get to the point of being, I am a creator and I can create whatever reality I want. You have to heal first because it's your inner child that already knows how to do all that stuff, but she needs adults' tools and viewpoints. And so it started with my healing journey, and then it escalated into the learning journey. And then it was just like, I was just expanding. Like, I was like, you know what? I've always been in school studying things that people always told me that I had to. And now I get to figure out like what I want to. It was my own way of coping with what I thought was the end of the world. And I really wanted to understand what consciousness was because I wanted to understand how to connect to my father and my grandparents had passed away on my father's side before I was born. And there was just something in me that really wanted to connect deeply with my ancestors. As you know, I'm a child of the African diaspora, but I'm also a child of the first island to be colonized in the Western world. So there's so much violence and uprooting and lack of like healing and connection that I come from. I coexist with African, indigenous, and European blood. So there's also like, I saw no examples outside of me of like how to love all three parts of myself and have them peacefully coexist. And so it became kind of like this hero's journey into myself of like, I'm determined to heal. And I'm going to do it like before it was popular, because now therapy is cool. I started going to therapy before it was cool, when it was just like, oh, what's wrong? And I'm like, I don't know, but I got to figure out what it is. But it was basically, if I had to say it simply, it was curiosity. I was just curious about learning about these topics. And the more that I learned about them, the more mind blown I became. And it completely shattered all of my world's views at the same time, which was its own challenge, because there's something to be said about being okay in the ashes of destruction and just sitting in the grief of destruction before you even start drawing up plans for what you're going to rebuild.
Wow. 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 And I hear you on the curiosity and being curious, but I'm also hearing that you were very tuned in to the resonance. And I would venture to guess, even though you didn't say this, I would venture to guess that you have really strong discernment of what is true, even if it's not what was taught.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Something that you've talked about, you've mentioned quantum physics.
Yes.
And I know I talk about curiosity. I'm very curious when it comes to all things quantum physics, metaphysical, and all of those things.
Yeah.
I feel like the Western world has shunned so much of truth. And this is a moment of awakening that is a possibility and opportunity for so many of us. So
Yes.
I would love for you, for those who are listening who may not be familiar with that term, or maybe they don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Can you share about quantum physics and as you have been on this journey of learning more about physics and metaphysical and philosophy and all of those things, what have you learned to be true?
Ooh, okay. How to explain quantum physics one-on-one. Okay. Challenge accepted. So it was actually quantum physics and astrophysics, the both of them, that helped me to tear apart spirituality, which I know is something that we'll go deeper into, but I just wanted to like kind of put the pin there for now. When I started searching for what consciousness was, I started reading a lot of Deepak Chopra's stuff, which is mind-blowing. And he has a book called You Are the Universe, or The Universe Is You, or something like that. And he basically goes to compare the parallels between what happens in the greater cosmos and what happens within us. And his thesis is like, as below, so above kind of thing. Those were the kind of books that started introducing me to how I, as a tiny little person on this tiny little planet around a basic star, could be connected to something as grand as the cosmos. I think in the metaphysical world, people talk about universe as like a very abstract concept, like, oh, I'll trust the universe and the universe has my back and blah, blah. When I'm talking about the universe, I'm talking about the actual container of consciousness that we all that anything originates from, including past, present, future, as just one continuous, like, it's kind of like the fish tank that holds all of the water and all of the species. Like the fish tank is consciousness. It is the universe. Anything that can happen, will happen, has happened, exists in that fish tank, but it has no edges. So that's just one way of helping to visualize. So quantum, I don't even know how I stumbled upon it, honestly. Like I was looking through my reading list and I'm like, how did I go from like spirituality to quantum physics? Because when I first started reading the books, I think it was one of Neil deGrasse Tyson's books, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. that I started to read. And I was like, what? Like, I would read it and I'm like, I gotta go. Like, I do not understand what you're saying. I am not a physics head. But quantum basically, what if you look at, for example, any object that we can see, taste, touch, like anything that we can interact with our five senses, and then you like zoom in and you zoom in and you zoom in all the way to the level that you can't zoom in anymore, eventually the visible becomes invisible. So we think about like cells is something, for example, that's very common to our language, but cells is just they're not even the smallest thing. The smallest thing is this thing called quanta. And quanta is even smaller than what we know as like an atom, which is what we thought was the smallest thing. So if you take an atom with its nucleus and protons and electrons and neutrons and all of that, and you go even deeper in that, then at the very smallest level, the indivisible thing that we have not been able to, it's literally indivisible, is quanta. And so the study quantum physics, or another word for it, another phrase for it is quantum mechanics, is the study of the minute. The other studies of astrophysics is the study of the macro. So you think about like micro, and then macro. And then everything that we study on Earth is like the study of like our planet. And so when I went down to that tiny level of like what everything is made out of, I realized that quanta is what everything is fundamentally made from. Like reality is made from these things that are not actually stable. They're not solid. When we think about, there's something really curious about quantum in that you can know how fast an electron is going or where it is, but not both. By the time you measure how fast it went, it already moved. And by the time you measure where it is, you don't know how fast it went. And so there's something, and it happens with light too. Light is weird because it's both a wave and a particle, depending on how it's observed. At a quantum level, and I'm not going to do as great of a job as someone who's teaching it, who knows astrophysics like as your background, but this is me as a psychologist interpretation of it. When quantum exists, when they are observed. So like y'all probably have heard the saying of where attention goes, energy follows.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that comes from. When you're paying attention to something and that's where your energy is, that is your reality. And so I took that and I'm like, wait a minute, like, right now people are responding incredibly differently to the same thing. And I noticed that first in the pandemic. Me as a quantitative researcher, I was like, the best thing for everyone to do is literally stay home. Let, the people that are sick and the people that don't have any symptoms, like let that air out. If we're just home for a few weeks, unless you're an essential worker, and we just stop trying to socialize, we can hunker down on this disease. And the way that people were just continuing to take risks and go out as if it wasn't a risk was incredibly curious to me. And I was like, oh, this is human diversity right here. Same exact stimuli, completely different responses. And then some people were angry, much anger about how other people, responded to the same stimuli. And so if you take the power of quantum and say, if my reality is based by my perception, then in order to change my reality, I have to change my perception. What am I looking at now? And instead of continuing to look at that and force that to be what you want, you actually have to stop looking at that and go in your cave of creativity and go explore in the world. What is more joyous? What is more light? What is more like, what do you want? The hardest thing to get out of people is what they want, because we're programmed to want what others want. In order to know what you want, you have to spend time with yourself, exploring self, playing with self. And so I use quantum physics to teach people, I teach a lot of creativity as well, to teach people that there are infinite realities that can exist, and they exist at the same time, just like in quantum, until they are observed. What do you want to observe? What is the reality that you want to create? Do you know that? If you don't know that, then you need to stop complaining about the system that exists and go hang out and create the new one, and then find people that are trying to build the new system. And so I think it's kind of one of those things where, like, take an example of a house. You can't buy a house and say, I hate this house so much. I hate the way that all of the rooms are organized. I hate that there's no windows here. I hate that, like, the way that the garden is. Like you're just like talking crap on the whole house when you can literally just go buy another one or go build another one that suits you. And I think we sometimes internalize systemic things so much that we forget that if I am endowed with the same energetic infinity as that which created everything, then I can create anything. And especially as a woman, my body was built to be a portal between the spiritual and the physical, even if I never give birth. So what do I want to give birth to? Am I clear on that? And that's usually where the work is. Get clear on what you want to give birth to, and then go create it.
After everything, I'm just like, I need a whole moment to digest and process just your wisdom. And I've warned you all listening, like there's going to be so much wisdom. I hope you're taking notes, hitting pause, doing what you have to do. I think in just these grand philosophies and ideas and things that sometimes may seem a little esoteric and hard to grasp, if for our listeners, if I'm listening and I'm like, I want to understand and I want to be able to apply these concepts to maybe what I'm doing. Like if I feel stuck in my creativity, for example, how can I use what you shared about quantum physics, what you shared about your spirituality, what you shared about even what you learn in Buddhism? Like, how can I use this to get and explore and have my creativity just come back to life? Sometimes I think we get stuck because we're in these systems, right? Like
Yeah.
what's the way to get unstuck and actually give life to this creativity that I know
Yeah.
lives inside of me?
Yeah. So when Queen Mindset Leadership first started, I was teaching people in coaching through the Wheel of Life. And I was trying to get people to define what their 10 out of 10 were. And for those that don't know what the Wheel of Life is, the Wheel of Life is different areas of your life. You rate them usually in the scale from 1 to 5, 1 to 10. And the theory is that when you have balance in all aspects of your life, then you'll have balance in all aspects of your life. So it includes things like spirituality, finances, friendships, relationship, career, and like 8 or 9 different variables that shift depending on who the facilitator is. And so what I started finding really curious when I was teaching coaches is that they resisted the Wheel of Life. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is a tool you use. How you fighting me when I'm teaching you what you teach your clients? Like, I did not create this. And that was so curious to me, was to see that even people that lead others to create balance have their own resistance about creating wealth, what I would define as really wealth in those areas. And so that got me into the mindset of like, what is keeping people from wanting a 10 out of 10? And I also had done some kind of like unofficial studies where I did a bunch of pro bono coaching, and I did the same thing. I gave them a love languages quiz, and I gave them a Wheel of Life quiz. And I'm just naturally very analytical, even if I don't write it down, because I've been trained like that my whole life. And so I'm looking through all these people and I'm like, why is it that when I ask you what you want in all aspects of your life, why isn't everything a 10 out of 10? And then I would say, like, I would ask them then, like, I would notice it and I would ask them, I'm like, I'm curious that you only put an 8 down for this. Why? Like, oh, well, I think a 10 is unrealistic. And I'm like, according to who? Because you haven't even told me what your 10 is. Why don't you want a 10 in this? It's like, well, I'm just trying to be realistic. And I realize that when we are realistic, you are living in scarcity and fixed mindset. Because if we only lived in what was real, none of how this world is would be what it is, because none of it existed when somebody imagined it.
Wow.
Exactly.
So in order to create innovation, it has to be some new stuff that hasn't been created. That is the definition of innovation. And so it started off from that perspective of like, okay, let's look at your Wheel of Life and see, what do you want? I also found that people had a difficult time imagining what that 10 out of 10 was. So what does a 10 out of 10 look like for you in your romance, in your friendships, in your money? And what I found is that it was teaching people how to take care of, I'll use a garden example. It was teaching people to look around like their house and their garden and figure out how to maximize that garden and the spaces in their houses instead of reimagining if they actually liked that garden or if they actually like the furniture in their room. Like, you're switching around furniture in your room and you hate that couch. Why are you putting a blanket on it? That's not going to change the fact that you hate this couch. Why do you have this couch? I have questions, you know? And so you were asking the question, what is the application of this? You have to look at your house and garden and take note of how you feel about what is currently happening. There is no way around that. You cannot manifest a new couch without admitting that you hate your current one. Because why are we changing it? So your feelings, your emotions, they're the signals that your intelligent system, your body, your heart, which is actually more intelligent than your brain is. Your heart is telling you, this what I want, this what I don't want. You, with your big brain, disconnected from your heart and your intuition, you're like, nah, squash that, veto. And then you're wondering why you are successful and miserable. Because your heart is like, girl, I don't want this. And you're like, yes, you do. And you're basically like torturing your inner child and saying you don't want what you want. So eventually what ends up happening, if you've read the book, The Alchemist, they talk about this concept. Eventually you shut down your heart enough, it will stop talking.
Yeah.
And you won't know what to do. And so the people that are, if you're one of those people that's constantly confused and never know what to do, your system is offline. And that's why trauma healing is such an important part. You are not in connection with your body. Your body knows what it wants.
Yes.
Wow. They do say your body can't lie. Your brain can lie, can tell you lies, but your body can't. It's impossible.
Right.
Be able to pay attention.
It's outfitted to guide us. And I have some theories about what organized religion does in order to get us disconnected from our bodies and see our bodies as sin and all of that.
I'm a recovering Catholic too, so I get it.
We have been taught that our bodies are not part of our human experience.
Yeah.
As if it's secondary. Our brain we are brain that just happens to be in a body. And so it's like being in a Tesla. I don't have a Tesla. I have another electric car. It's like being in an electric car and like completely ignoring all the signals. Now you're Fred Flintstone. You're not taking advantage of the advanced system that you've been outfitted with to lead you to your path. Your heart is the leader of your path. The path that actually fulfills you, not the path that will initially fill your bank account. It might not initially fill your bank account, but it'll fill your heart to the point where eventually people will pay you for being so heart-centric and strategic. There's a combination of the heart and the strategy.
Yes.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
Yes.
So
I have to adjust.
I have to resituate. Right.
Right.
Does our heart know at birth? Like, when does our heart know? And you talked about listening to your inner child earlier versus shunning her, he or she. And I'm curious as to how does our child, like, how does our heart know at such a young age? Do we come in with this knowing? We come to earth with this knowing, and then we're like deconditioned, or we're colonized out of our knowing and what our heart already has at birth? Like, how and when do we know?
Yeah. Well, the heartbeat is one of the things that when people are having babies, it is the thing that gives them the sense there is life there. Not the brain development. The heart develops before the brain. So we see a heartbeat and we're like, it's alive, right? And there's a lot of nebulousness around how people judge like what a human fetus, whatever it is. But that is our indication of this has the potential to be a viable human being. Without a heartbeat, that's it. That's where it stops, right? You can be brain dead and your heart's still beating. You're still technically alive.
Wow.
That's true.
right?
It's
So
true.
you think about the electricity that happens to a zygote, right? An egg and a sperm, and fun fact, the egg is the one that chooses the sperm.
Uh, ooh, uh.
Yes. The egg is like, you can come in. Y'all are done. And it deactivates the other sperm once it makes that connection.
Wow.
That's a whole nother word. Like when we talked about divine feminine and the power. So we're gonna pin that because
Yes.
we could go somewhere else. Thank you for that pin. We'll revisit.
Yes. So already in the womb is kind of like if you've ever been in a pool underwater, it's like you're not of the world fully, you know? And birth is actually traumatizing for both parties because now there's all of these noises and all this light and all this stuff. Like that's why babies can't really hear, see, taste. Like they're just kind of like, what is all of this? This is like so overwhelming. And so the womb is the safety that beings require in order to be protected. Like everything about a uterus is created to protect this being almost at cost of its caretaker, right? In my case, my birth almost killed my mother. It did kill my mother. She just had to come back because she had an assignment to come back and guide me. So she's here.
Right.
Wow.
But there is already an intelligence that's happening as we're developing in the womb, right? And
Yeah.
when we are born, when we take our first breath on this planet, that is when our worth starts.
Mm.
We are viable, we are vital, we are purposeful because we made it through the canal of birth into the physical experience. We started off with an egg is the biggest cell in the human body. It is the size of the tip of a pencil. Is how we start. And the DNA within us just knows, just very much like how a tree knows how to bloom in spring without it being told.
Yeah.
That intelligence starts unfolding. And if you even study biology or if you study any kind of level from micro or macro, you'll find in Mother Nature this intelligent design, whatever you want to call it, it's an intelligent design, right? That unfolds in and of itself. And so by the time that a child is being born, like a strong heartbeat is also informative of is this human going to make it? Because back in the day, a lot of children didn't make it out of childbirth or out of their first few years of life. It's a very sensitive, volatile aspect of human existence because we can't take care of ourselves. We have to rely on other people to do everything for us. We're literally like just a sack of meat with a big head, like can't do anything with it and just very strong arms and legs for some reason, you know? And so the heart is actually a vortex. The way that it's shaped, whenever you unhook a heart, it's a vortex, like a whirlpool. And it has its own electromagnetic fields that science can detect up to 3 feet from extending from your body. So the planet has an electromagnetic field, and it is what allows us to stay protected and safe in our environment from all of the wild stuff that happens in space. The sun has its own electromagnetic field, and it envelops the solar system with its light, literally light. The sun, because of the sun, we are able to see on this planet. Like, so when you like break down all the way that the things are designed, it's perfection. We're on a planet that exists in a way that we're protected by this atmosphere. We have a star that's not too close nor too far, that gives us light, that allows us to see. We have a brain that eventually allows us to create language, which was not always a thing for our ancestors. And so very much like the sun and the earth has its electromagnetic system, the heart, when you hear sometimes, you might say like, oh, I really love her energy. I love her vibe. I love her aura. That's your heart. That's your heart emanating from you.
Wow. Wow.
So when you have not healed your trauma, your heart chakra is blocked.
Yeah.
You do not trust Mother Earth. You don't trust people. You don't trust your parents. You don't trust nobody. You might not even trust yourself because this is offline. You cannot connect with someone who is offline here.
Yeah.
The circuit is closed. So when the Heart Math Institute, I think it's what it's called. They're like one of the
Yeah.
organizations that does this kind of research, and I kind of dabble in some of the work that they do. But when I started studying what the heart actually does, I'm like, oh man, like this is what I realize is, because I study a lot of chakras too, and that is an inherent part of chakras. To me, is how you manifest the abundant energy of the world. Is a way of anchoring it, is a way of accessing it with different pit stops of it. What I teach in my creative awakening classes that I teach in the community is that the heart is the portal between the spiritual imaginative world and the physical form and manifestation of it. If your heart is not open and not in alignment, you will have ideas that will not come into fruition or will not come into fruition in alignment, or you will only live in the physical realm and you will not dream, you will not hope, you will not imagine or reimagine, because your third eye, your throat, all of this right here is closed.
Wow.
So your access to abundance is closed. So therefore, your reality is your truth. And we coexist with people that are on all sides of that continuum.
Yes, because in the 7 chakras, 7 main chakras, the heart is in the center.
Right.
So you're not there, you're not connected there, nothing can function properly. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I know somebody in my circle who is offline right now." Based on that description.
Yeah.
That was helpful. That was so good.
Yeah.
I have so many more questions, but Kailei, I want you to have some time. I saw your face.
No, I mean, there's just so much there. And I know that we haven't, there's one thing that you have mentioned, and you've mentioned elements of this, and I am really like on the edge of my seat to hear what you have to say about this.
Okay.
Something that you mentioned was, and this was, leading up into this conversation, was this connection that you made between spirituality, creativity, and money.
Mm.
And you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said they're all the same thing. And I think I am with you, because what I know to be true, well, I'll say this. I have had that connection of, oh, the closest that we can get to God is creativity, because God is the divine creator.
Mm-hmm.
So creativity, our ability to even create and open ourselves up to create, allows God to come in and us to be that reflection of God.
Yeah.
But when you said money is the same, I was like, oh, I'm listening. So do tell.
Okay.
Break this down.
So I have been studying money for like 10 years in different capacities, from like an economics perspective, from a psychology perspective, energetics perspective, like from my own experience of it, from people always have big feelings about money. Like no matter how much they have or don't have of it, how much debt or that they don't have, like it is a very emotional topic. And so for me, my curiosity, I'm like, why don't we all share this? Like no matter what creed, color, gender, whatever you are, we always think about this, right? And there's a lot of us that make decisions based off of how much we will keep or lose money, right? And what I started finding curious when I entered the entrepreneurship realm is how people create their own businesses to do what they want to and still work with people they don't want to because of the money. And I'm like, why are you working with somebody you hate? Like, you have choice.
Right.
Why is your alignment less than the security of the money? And for most people, yeah. And so it started off with just kind of like, I had taken like a money mindset coaching thing, because I didn't know anything about sales and marketing. I didn't know nothing about business. I just looped in. I jumped in and I was like, I definitely know that I don't want that. What I do want, I don't know, but it's not that. So let me just jump into the ocean. And like, I've gotten bit and like drowned a few times, but I'm here learning how to breathe. And so first it was like, I'm building my business and I'm like learning all these things about money and marketing and like learning about, for example, how in branding and marketing, how you move people is not from rationale, it's from emotions, which didn't know that because never built a brand before, right? So I'm like, oh, from the colors that you choose, from the fonts that you choose, everything has a psychology to it. And there's a way of enticing people, moving them to an action of something without them being consciously aware of it. And that, of course, was fascinating to me as a psychologist. I'm like, oh, I can apply my psychology lens to sales and learn it that way because that feels familiar to me. And so I was building my business kind of in the background. And then I have a friend of mine who introduced me to The Artist's Way, which is a book that she gave me a year and a half
One
ago.
of my favorites.
Me too.
Oh my gosh. I am a cult leader for it. I tell everybody about it.
Same.
She happened to give me this book, first book that she'd given in our friendship. And she just happened, I don't believe in coincidences. So I say happen, ironically. She gave me this book. She happened to give it to me the day before I was going on this writer's retreat in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is its own portal. And I wanted to celebrate my birthday by myself because I was scared to celebrate my birthday by myself. And so I was like, well, let me just jump into the fear and get it over with and just like see how bad it is. And so I booked this retreat. I'd never done a writer's retreat before. And when I'm kind of one of those people where like, if I'm going somewhere, I just need to know high level, like what I'm doing. I don't need to know the details. And so I didn't know everybody that was going to be at this retreat. I just knew one of the authors that I wanted to see was going to be there and everybody else was just going to be a bonus for me. As I'm at the airport and I'm trying to like look up the address of where I'm going, because I did not have that written down. I see the name of the author of the book, Julia Cameron, was going to be at this retreat. And I was like, damn, I didn't know. I would have brought my book for her to sign if I would have known she was going to be here. So I got to witness her in all of her age, with all of her creativity, talk about these morning pages and artist dates. And I was like, because I hadn't read the book. I just got it and I left it at home. She just gave it to me the previous day before I literally flew out.
No coincidence.
Right. And I was like,
wow.
And so that was my entrance into creativity. And so last year in the spring, I did the book in a workshop in community, which I only recommend that people read this book. If you've never read it before, in community, do not do it by yourself. It's too triggering. You're not going to have a mirror to bounce off of. It's not that it's not possible. It's just harder. And it gives you community too. And in it, she talks about how spirituality is the electricity that leads to creativity. And that was the first time that I had heard that. So like, that's when that concept was starting to be born. It's like, oh, okay, well, we are channelers of spirituality that create creativity, not authors of it. And there's a lot of healing with spirituality that you have to do in order to open yourself up to be a channel. Because if you have spiritual trauma, it feels like a violation to open yourself up to channel.
Yeah.
So you have to literally change your mind about what spirituality means to you. You have to redefine what spirituality means to you and leverage your life experiences and whatever. I believe that our belief systems are an integral part of what our eventual belief systems can be. So even though I'm not a practicing Catholic, my Catholic roots gave me a point of departure to study other things. If I hadn't had that, I wouldn't have had a point of departure. And so I always look at things as like, this exists as a reflection. So it tells me where I want to go, whether deeper in that direction, diametrically opposed or completely in the opposite direction. And so I finished the course. And when I finished the course, I was like mind blown. I was like, oh my God, I want to be a Renaissance woman. I want to be a painter and a sculptor and a pianist and a writer and a speaker. And like, I want to be all these things. And I was like, this is a lot. This is very overwhelming for all of this. How do I do that? So I've been doing my artist dates. I've been doing morning pages. It'll be a year on April 16th of this month. So
Wow.
I'm true to it.
Yeah.
My journal too, it's a different practice. And so that was the creativity, the artist. And like, so I've flourished a lot as an artist. I launched my first mastermind. I wrote the first draft of my book. Like I say whatever's on my mind now, like all of these expressive things started happening. at the same time, I'm building products in my business, and products that are like nothing that I've ever experienced before. I'm architecting something different because I'm seeing things, and I'm like, people aren't talking about this, and I'm like, well, I'll build it then. Let me experiment with that. And I've been building, that's where Queen Mindset Leadership was built, out of a lot of experimentation. I facilitated it in groups. I facilitated to individuals. I facilitated to men. I facilitated to spiritual girlies, non-spiritual. Like I can talk Queen Mindset Leadership to any human with a brain. And it can land, because if you're a human, like that is the underlying thing. So if you were to take a product, how people make money in a business, and you were to deconstruct it, you are creating a solution to a problem and letting people know, I have this solution to this problem. Sometimes you have to educate them on the problem that they have because they may not know, right? But you created something that is going to help solve something else. And because of you solving their problem, they give you money. You're like, thank you. I had a flat tire. I needed a plug. You had a plug. Here's money. Cool. So when you zoom out and look at what commerce is, what business is, it is the exchange of a service or a product for another service or product or money. So I was like, okay, so in a way, creating products is like creativity, but it is creativity that is problem solving, right? Where it is creativity that is moving someone. Because art doesn't necessarily solve a problem, but it does help you feel. It helps you express. And so we buy art because if we feel like it's an extension of us in some way, or it reminds us of someone that we love, it moves us in some way. Or you could also invest in art as an investment, but it still serves a purpose for you. Somebody created it, you buy, there's an exchange of energy. So when you look at money as an exchange of energy, then when we sell something, I'm not giving you something that you don't want. I'm like, girl, you said you had this problem and I got this solution and I like you. So you want it from me or not? And if you say no, it's like, okay, well, cool. On to the next person. Like if we treated sales that way, then we wouldn't take it personal, because your no is just taking me to the person that's going to say the yes that I want. Right. So I can work with people that I love to work with versus just accept your money because it's going to pay the bills. I don't want your money that's just going to pay the bills, because I don't want to hate you. And I already hate you. So I don't want to work with you. Like inner child is like, no, I don't want to work with people that just because they give me money. Because I did that my entire career. I worked at a job that I hated because people gave me money. And now I want to work because I want to do it. And if you pay me, that's great. But if you don't pay me, I know that I love to do this. So that was kind of like further deconstructing. But then I was like, wait a minute. When did money come into the game? Because why do we have such deep feelings about it? What did people used to do before money came around? And you start mapping that out with the population growth. We just hit 1 billion humans on this planet in like 1873 or something. We currently have 8.2 billion. Wow. It took us 130 years to go from our first billion to our second billion. And now it goes up 1 billion every 10 to 15 years. We have literally never had this many humans on this planet ever. And we've never had this type of technology that allows us to travel and connect with humans immediately in this way. So we are now seeing the creator's creativity on Earth in a way that we've never witnessed before. And to many of us who are not learners and growers and travelers and adventurers, it's overwhelming because the diversity of this planet is overwhelming.
Yeah,
it is. It's a lot to take in. So if we are only in logic mode, you're shutting down. Intuition is offline. Heart is offline. I don't know what to do. I'm overwhelmed with information because you're only here and not here. And now before we could only this was fine to make decisions because we had like 5 choices. Now we have 5 billion. What do I do? Nothing. Frozen. Stuck. Because I don't feel anything. All I'm doing is thinking and overthinking and being paralyzed because there's too many choices. But we're not meant to just rule with this, right?
Right.
So what I'll say as a closing to like how I've deconstructed everything, because I know that y'all have reactions and questions and stuff, is creativity came online about 40,000 years ago. And we know of that through like cave paintings and pottery and things that early humans started to create, right? money came online 5,000 years ago. Writing came online around the same time. As population started to grow more and more, writing and money became incredibly important ways of tracking the exchange of goods and services. If you don't have writing, how you going to track who paid who what?
Yeah.
Like, you can't remember all the people that paid you because it's not 5 people anymore. It might be 500. And if everybody's just giving you pebbles for your service, like, you don't need pebbles, you need rice. Where are you going to get rice from? So money has no positive or negative tinge to it. It is literally a resource that we infuse with an energy and say, this is good or not. And so when we say money is bad and money's listening, it is not going to pull up to your house because you're talking about it as if it's going to make you evil, right? We have a lot of negative stereotypes about people and wealth. And I don't think that money is just wealth. There's wealth in friendships, there's wealth in joy, there's wealth in relationships, all of that. And so we have created a very negative relationship with money that even when we're entrepreneurs, we don't want to say big numbers out loud. We don't want to charge big numbers for things. We don't think that we're capable of handling big amounts of money because we think we're going to go crazy or turn evil or something. And so when you look at how much population has increased, going back to that, how much population has increased in the last 200 years, we went from 1 billion humans to 8 billion humans. How else are we going to keep track of our energetic exchanges without money? It is a streamlined system that was created for the facilitation of exchange. Like, we are here to exchange with each other. And that's why commerce is so powerful. And so the last thing that I'll say is that when I looked up also when entrepreneurship came online in a similar timeline to when we hit our first billion number of humans, because now we are transitioning from an agricultural world to an industrial world where more services and products can be created at scale, which we had never had before. And now entrepreneurship has the opportunity to innovate society in a way that governments can't, because governments are created to be stable. And when you create something to be stable, it cannot also, except for 2025, be innovative and destructive. Like, so entrepreneurship gives us the iPhone, the internet, like all of these things that we're literally using right now to be in this space was scientists and entrepreneurs. The internet came about because scientists wanted to learn how to exchange big amounts of data. So there's always been an innovative component to humans that has allowed us to create something that then we want to share with others. That's what business is. And I think when you look at it from the approach of the spirituality is the electricity that allows you to be alive. That is your breath.
Good.
Your creativity is anything that comes out of you, even if you just style your hair or make breakfast or go for a walk. Every conscious decision is an act of creative expression. Doesn't have to be on a canvas. And then when you take the creativity and you look at the human space and say, what is the problem that people are having that I can create a solution specifically targeted for that? Now you have a product. Now you have a business. Now people give you money for using your spirituality and your creativity to serve a human problem. We're not a human problem. So when you like take it apart from that, it's like, why are we scared of making a bunch of money? Why are we not looking at ourselves as circulators of energy? And this is just spenders. I'm not just making money. I am receiving money that I will recirculate back to my fellow humanity.
Circulators of energy. That's powerful.
So good. So good.
I like want to ask you a really intelligent question, but I can't even like
Same.
process all of this. I guess if I were to offer to our audience, just practical advice, maybe I'm hearing all of this, Dr. CarolLaine, and I am intrigued and I'm called and I'm moved. And I just want like maybe some practical next steps. Like I want to really unlock my creativity. I want to get unblocked if I feel I'm blocked. My chakras aren't, open. I'm
Yeah.
not walking in alignment with what I know my heart's calling is. If you were to leave our audience with just practical next steps
Yeah.
to really open that up, what would that be?
I would say to take the next month, we're now in spring season, and I do think it's very powerful to align with Mother Nature and her season. So this is a season of blooming, but I think you can also make it whatever you want it to be. I would tell people, spend the next month observing yourself in your life. Pay attention to every single aspect of your life, every single interaction. Be present and see how you feel. See how you feel when you're most open. See how you feel when you're most joyous. See how you feel whenever you go out, whatever you're, just notice how you feel about what your life is and write it down. And from that space of observing your own life and writing it down, what don't you love? And what do you want more of? What do you want to feel more in your life? And once you start identifying what you want to feel more in your life, you're like, I want to feel more playful. Then the next step is, well, what makes me feel more playful? And so that would be like the simplified version of it. Look at your life for the next month, track it, have a journal or something that is like, this is how I feel when I'm interacting with this person, when I go to this place. And if it doesn't feel like a good time, or if it feels neutral, if you're new to feeling how you feel, just pay attention to see. Pay attention to see where there might be contrast. Maybe you hang out with one friend and it feels great. You hang out with another friend, it doesn't feel great. And now you're like looking at that friend like, what's up with this? And just get curious about your own life. That's the only way that you can re-architect a new reality, is you have to witness what is there and be okay with it being not what you want it to be. Because it's kind of like walking around and looking at your garden that you have not de-weeded in a long time. Like, just be okay and be like, yeah, these weeds are wild. And that's the truth. And it can be, and it's not positive or negative, it just is. And then commit yourself to changing at least one aspect of your life. And experiment with the creatorship. See how you can change your mind and change your reality. You have to strengthen the muscle of seeing something different, becoming it, and seeing what happens. And once you unlock that, then you can just manifest like every day. But there is that internal alignment that you have to know. It's like, I love analogies. So the last analogy that I'll say is like, imagine going to like a Walmart supercenter type of buffet that has everything that you could eat. And anything can be created from any of the ingredients that are there, even if it's not on the menu. In order to be able to get what you want out of this infinite place, you have to know what you like. I can't tell you that you want pizza because you're like, I hate cheese. How am I going to know that? Unless you tell me I hate cheese. I don't want pizza. I want a salad. Like, get super clear on what you want, because one of the things that I think differentiates the people that are the most fulfilled in our life experiences versus not, and this is inspired by a book I just finished called 10X is Easier Than 2X.
Of course.
We've read that as a community.
Oh,
Yes.
Game changer.
I
Yes.
So much alignment. So much
I love
alignment.
it. Well, they say become a powerful wanter.
Mhm.
Want what you want and not have any shame about it. Because every time you spend money on something, someone else is getting paid for that. You're paying someone's service or someone's product for that. And I think that there's a lot of like anti-capitalism that exists, and we like want money to stop existing, but money is not good or bad. It just is. Change your relationship with money. Start feeling joyful about paying someone who loves their craft and is charging you for that, so that you don't have to do it. And then use your time to perfect your craft. And that is the only way that you'll be able to figure it out, is by spending time with yourself. There's no way around it.
Absolutely.
So become your own best friend and like hang out with them, because you're going to be hanging out with you until your last breath. Might as well make it fun.
Yes. Well, we have our growth work. We often talk about growth work here, and that is your growth work for this next month. We will have that in the show notes. We will also, I feel like there needs to be a book list that is in the show notes
Mhm.
because you've mentioned some great ones, so we'll make sure to include those in the notes as well. How can people connect with you if they want to learn more about you and your work?
Yeah. So all of my stuff is branded Dr. CarolLaine M. Garcia on LinkedIn and Instagram. I do invite professional people to follow me on Instagram because Instagram is where I live what I talk about. It's the embodiment of the work that I share about on LinkedIn. And I actually just launched a revamped newsletter Friday. It used to be called Wild Queen Aventuras. And it kind of spoke to like me just being disruptive and recreating my life and playing. But now I've shifted it to cosmic love letters. And it's
Mhm.
an intimate space to wonder about what does it even look like to continually create space in your life to reimagine and becoming a powerful wanter and wanting what you want and having as much fun as you want. Like, how do you do that on a daily basis? There's a bunch of blogs and stuff that I create on that, but my newsletter is like my intimate like container of space. And so that is drcarolinemgarcia.com/ cosmic love letters. So yeah, those are ways that people can start coming into my space and seeing like how I do and how I be, and hear more about like how do you really take the wisdom and knowledge of the seasons and the nature and the cosmos and make it really practical. So my approach is something theoretical, something practical, and then a way for you to reflect or engage in something that I'm creating.
Beautiful.
Dr. CarolLaine, this has been a gift, such a pleasure.
Yes.
You are creative, you are radiant, you are brilliant,
Thank you.
in
Yes.
just all the most amazing ways. Thank you for spending time with us today in this conversation. I don't think it's the last time we'll hear from you. I'm just putting that out.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. I don't think so
I
either.
don't think so.
No.
I'm full. I am so full. I can't wait to listen
Same.
and re-listen to this podcast, and I
Same.
hope you all listening will do the
Yes.
same. Thank you. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thank
This
you.
is Beyonding.
This is Beyonding.